Welcome to 10 Questions About Film, a podcast where I ask filmmaker friends 10 questions all about film and their filmmaking process. In this episode, I talk to independent filmmaker Mark A.C. Brown. Mark has written and directed several features, including Guardians, which is shown on Apple TV and Amazon, as well as all the usual platforms. His second feature, Dead on the Vine, had its world premiere at Kevin Smith's Smodcastle Film Festival and its UK premiere at the Unrestricted View Film Festival. It took home awards for Best Film and Best Actor at both, as well as Best Ensemble at Smodcastle and Best Director and Best Actress at Unrestricted View. It has since been picked up by Dark Arts Entertainment and is now releasing. Mark is currently working on horror feature Video Killed the Radio Star, with Dreamtown Films, to be directed by Brad Watson and starring Bridgerton's Harriet Cains and Jojo Rabbit's Luke Brandon Field. He is also developing a slate of films alongside producer Laura Rees, including feature script Limpid, which has won Best Unproduced Screenplay at the British Horror Film Festival, the Horrified Film Festival, and the Lit Laughs Comedy Film Festival. As a writer, Mark has also written for TV shows such as Mr. Mayfair on Apple TV+, starring Golden Globe winner Armand Assante and Starship Troopers Casper Van Dien. So, thank you, Mark, for joining me. I don't know if you saw, but just before we started doing this, Val Kilmer died last night.
I did. Literally, I spent the last 45 minutes watching Tombstone clips and stuff like
amazing.
that. And they, his fight scenes in Willow and all that kind of stuff, because I loved Val Kilmer. I mean, I think I kind of been reassessing him over the years. Then I watched the documentary he made, which was really quite lovely. Then you see the people that loved him, like Michael Douglas and Josh Brolin's been talking about him all. It's kind of like Brando, in the way that he loved what he did, but he didn't love it so much that he took it that seriously, and it pissed a lot of people off that he would mess about or do things in a different way, or just, I guess, to try and keep himself interested. His output was just amazing. It was amazing. There was 10 films that complete seminal films for me. Top Secret, Willow, Top Gun, Heat.
I mean, Heat is without a doubt one of my favorite. But I think he's fantastic in that movie. He's so good in it.
Yeah, it's a brilliant film, and he's kind of very, very egotistical in that film, because he takes such a backseat to De Niro, Pacino, and he's cool as anything, but he still really doesn't really speak that much in it, and he's just sort of
It's a very small part, but he does a lot with it.
He does.
Even though that character is not necessarily the nicest of characters, you do empathise with what he's going through, and I think it's a very underrated performance.
No, I think he's a fantastic actor. Did you ever watch, was it The Salton Sea?
No, I didn't.
It went straight to video here, but it's got quite a bigger following in America. It was kind of early 2000s. It's where he's in this drug gang, and he's covered in tattoos and all this kind of stuff. Then everything is not what it seems, though, and it's got a really quite cool twist and everything. He's amazing in that, because it's really just about him, and it's a really strong sort of leading man performance. Kind of went under the radar, and I was glad to see it, because it's one of those ones you think, how is this not in the cinema?
I think that was the problem because of his looks. The industry saw him as a leading man, but actually I think he was a much more interesting actor than that, and that's why I think he kind of kicked against the whole kind of Hollywood thing in a way. I don't think he wanted to just be a leading man,
Yeah, and when they tried to make him leading man, he wasn't that good at it, because he was interesting, he was unusual, he was a bit different,
So anyway, I'd like to, if that's okay with you, I'd like to dedicate this episode to Val Kilmer anyway, because
I would be honoured to be
both big fans of Val
Kilmer on an episode. Yeah. He was a legend, and very sad to see him go.
Right. Okay. Well, let's move on to the actual interview. It's always great to talk to someone whose struggle is similar to my own, I would say, and not always bashing your head against the wall trying to get things made and then getting them made, which I think it's just a real achievement these days. It's very easy, I think, for people to give up, and so I've been following your career with great delight, actually, to see that you're moving on and you're doing stuff regularly, which is really important, I think, to get a body of work behind you. So the first question is a really simple question. One, tell me about yourself. What's your background? What have you done?
I'm Mark A.C. Brown, the AC because of my exceptionally dull name and some of the other Mark Browns on IMDb, so they're my middle initials. I'm a filmmaker, predominantly a screenwriter. So I've had 5 feature films produced, 2 of which I've directed, 3 of which I have not. 2 of those are incoming this year, hopefully. Dead on the Vine is definitely, I directed that one. That's coming out on May 13th in America.
Brilliant.
And Video Killed the Radio Star is in progress for all that kind of stuff. Still a bit of post to do on that, I believe, and hopefully should be out at some point before the end of the year. I've done a lot of theatre stuff as well, a load of short films, but I could go on and on. I'm a compulsive writer, and if I'm not doing something, I go crazy.
What's your preferred discipline then? Is it writing or directing?
I can't not write. I love writing. I write every single day. I have ideas on an hourly basis. So if they're not a short film, they're a feature film or a play, I'm always writing. So writing is what I do.
Okay.
I love directing. It takes up a lot more time and is a much more tediously slow process. So it's not as much fun as writing, but I do love it. I love being on set and I love the finished product. I love the editing as well, actually. But it's just so long, especially when you haven't got the money to kind of do things on a normal schedule. It's a very frustrating thing. So I think writing, because I have control over it.
So as a writer, do you hate it when the director comes in and decides to rewrite everything or improvise around anything? How's that process for you?
I mean, I've directed a couple of short films for other people. I've directed a few plays for other people, which I do find good fun, actually, because I really enjoy the interpretation and I enjoy the collaboration with the writer. The other way around, when it's me being the writer and another director comes on, yeah, it's not always easy. I just try and be a bit dispassionate about it. And, they're paying me to work for them. So unless it's a 50-50 collaboration, then really I'm just doing what they need me to do. So yeah, I mean, it can be frustrating when I don't necessarily agree with what they're on about, but it's the job, So you've got to put your best foot forward and try and do your best work within the parameters that they set out. If it's someone taking one of my scripts and then reworking it, I mean, that hasn't happened that much really, because it's getting a spec script sold and then made. I've had spec scripts optioned a number of times. I've had things going to pre-production a number of times, and it just hasn't gotten over the line. So most of those ones that haven't been made have actually been quite pleasurable, though, process-wise. I've worked with the directors, and it's been quite nice. Because if I don't like the director, if it's my script, then I'll just tap out. I'll take it away.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you've misunderstood the situation and I'm taking my ball and going home.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like that with my own scripts when I'm directing my own scripts.
I do that afterwards. I was like, who let this guy do
this bloody director doesn't understand a word I've written.
Drives me mad.
How much do you stick to your own words when you are directing? I mean, how much play is there for you? Are you able to go on set and work around things, or are you pretty rigid to the script?
I'm not that rigid. I like to try and get what I've written down. I mean, with Guardians, my first feature that I directed, that was a very loosey-goosey set, but the script was pretty much adhered to 95%, and then the other 5% was actors coming in with a bit of an ad-lib or situations causing a bit of a change on the day, like actors not turning up.
Yes, been there, done that.
So having to rewrite an entire scene because the actor that was meant to be there didn't turn up. All that kind of stuff. So I actually quite like it not when that happens, but when I have to think on my feet and have to find a way through. It's quite kind of good fun. Dead on the Vine was a different circumstance because we had so little prep time, because we got the offer of the vineyard that we shot on in May, and this is during lockdown, and we were on that vineyard and shooting the film in mid-July. So I hadn't written a script. So I had to write the script, and then we had to try and somehow rehearse it whilst not being allowed to be near each other, because the first day we shot was the first day lockdown ended.
Right, okay.
So we weren't allowed to be together until we were on set, really.
And did you have a COVID coordinator for on set, or was it
was pre the protocols. Nothing had come in. All we had to do was sign these waivers. Obviously, we were not idiots. We had the bonus of shooting on a 77-acre vineyard, so it's not like we couldn't socially distance.
Yeah, exactly.
But everyone did tests. Everyone had negative tests, and then we separated all the departments for their accommodation. So we had some people staying on site in the little hotel that was unused. I was camping in a tent with some of the actors and the DOP, and we had 3 tents. And then some of the actors were staying in the producer's house. We did our best to be safe. Well, if we were inside, the crew was wearing masks. But yeah, it was kind of weird because obviously after that, all the protocols came in.
Yeah, I experienced all of that because I lost basically 2 years worth of work. So I had nothing. So the only thing I could get was some film extra work, and I worked on a TV series as an extra, a really big production. We had to have like 3 COVID tests just to get on site. So you'd have to drive there 2 days before you were meant to be shooting. So, you'd have to travel like 25, 30 miles just to go and have a COVID test to be able to go back 2 days later. Then first thing when you turn up in the morning, you'd have a COVID test. Then once that had okayed, they'd get you out of your car and you go inside. But inside, you were in holding, in the holding tent that they have, in a plastic bubble with a little table. And so it was like everybody was in their own little plastic bubble. And there was like about 200 of us. And you couldn't talk to anyone. There was normally, when you're in holding, at least you can talk to people, and it kind of, it's boring, but you can at least have a bit of social life. All of that was gone. And we were in there because they'd been shut down by COVID and they were behind schedule. They basically had us there from 4 a.m. in the morning, sitting in a tent in our own little bubble. And that was it. And like every hour we could go outside to get a bit of fresh air, but then have to come back in and sit in your bubble. So, you just sleep a lot. So we were just there just in case they managed to get enough scenes in the can that day to get to the crowd scenes. And then finally it got to about 11:30 at night. And they said, right, we'll be going down to set in a minute. And then they wrapped us. So literally from 4 a.m. to midnight, I was sat in a bubble, sleeping and reading. I mean, I got paid very well for it. And then we didn't even get on set. And then finally, after a couple of days of this, we got on set. And it was meant to be a tavern, like an old medieval tavern. So they cram us all into this set. And then masks off, everyone, so they're like spending all this time making sure everybody's in these bubbles, these self-contained bubbles. And then we're all kind of just breathing over each other for about 4 or 5, hours. I mean, I get it. They needed to make sure that by the time you get on set, there's no COVID there. But all it took was one person to have, had a negative test when they actually had it. So it was a bit of a crazy situation, that whole COVID thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was.
Interesting. Has any of that fed into your scripts, do you think?
I think definitely my kids definitely fed into my scripts a lot more. And it's just your fears change when you have kids. The different things scare you, and it's less about your own internal fears and more about like fears of external things hurting people more.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's the thing. I think everyone's mental health kind of came to the fore during COVID, and it became a more open subject, I think. And I think that opened me up to writing about my own struggles and experiences, which I had never been able to do before. I'd never had a kind of access to that part of my brain where I could talk about that kind of thing. So, Dead on the Vine, I think, was a direct response to that as well. Yeah, I think just the world changed, didn't it? And the fears of everyone changed. The dynamic of the world changed, because it kind of, for a moment, it felt like everyone felt like they were in something together as well. And so there was a togetherness, lovely stuff that came from COVID of everyone kind of trying to help each other out. But then obviously the gigantic levels of corruption that were going on above our heads, that really kind of pushed me to the limits of my abilities to handle humanity, So yeah, all this definitely fed into our writing.
And that's still playing out, isn't it? That's the problem.
Well, it's getting worse in so many ways.
It is bizarre. I mean, I thought that COVID would absolutely change the world for the better. I was convinced that this is going to change people. This is going to change us. And it didn't. It made it worse. And I don't understand. I honestly don't. It's the first time in my life I sort of now understand why my grandparents got to that stage where they went, I don't understand the world anymore. It doesn't make any sense. And I now understand it, because it doesn't make sense what's going on. But inevitably, I suppose it does, because opportunists were going to take advantage. And that's what's happened, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely pulled back the veil on what people above us valued, which was definitely money, it turned out.
Yeah, who would have thought?
I think also because so many things happened whilst we were in lockdown, during and after it, like Black Lives Matter and even like Me Too and all those kind of things, because we were all sat at home and we were really focused and these things were on everyone's minds. And I think so many cultural changes that were kind of tangible and happening in real time happened, and it scared a lot of people who were scared of that thing ever happening. It's it's had a lasting effect on people, good and bad.
I like to think that what we really are experiencing at the moment is more the death throes of an old system rather than the start of something bad.
Well, it's meant to be, isn't it? It's meant to be the end of capitalism because they won. Like capitalism ultimately does feed to the top, and now it is such a tiny amount of people who have all the wealth that seemingly you think there's nowhere else to go. But then they're still looking for ways, aren't they? So
I mean, it's bizarre what we're doing. Okay, right. Let's move on to question number 2. What was the spark? When did you know that this was how you were going to spend the rest of your life?
very early, really, like 3 or 4 years old. I mean, The Wizard of Oz is the first film I remember going, this is amazing. How does this work?
Fly, my beauties, fly. I mean, it's still terrifying.
And yeah, and I do think it's because it was the black and white going into color thing that instantly made you realize that this is not real, that someone's doing this, someone's messing with your head. So I think that really put in my brain that films are films and not a gateway to another universe, but something that someone made. Then followed by all the Spielberg stuff, Jaws and E.T. and everything, way too young for so many films that I saw as a kid, like Deliverance and
yeah,
like,
we all did those.
Yeah, like six years old, I reckon I was when I saw Deliverance.
Wow, that's pretty.
And similar with most of those films, American Werewolf, all these films. And the directors are the people that I knew the most.
Yeah.
So I knew it was Steven Spielberg's Jaws and E.T. I knew it was John Landis doing American Werewolf. These names were my celebrities as a kid.
Yeah, same here.
And so it was kind of like a band name, you know, and so I was always a bit of a completist. So as soon as I saw this person's name, I was like, well, I want to see more of that thing, you know. So I'd go and find all John Landis's films and all Spielberg's, and then Zemeckis and Joe Dante and everything like that. So all that kind of early 80s.
I think that period of film from Jaws really to probably 85 with Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters around that time. I think that 10-year period is incredible for filmmaking.
Yeah.
There's so many seminal films that came out during that 10-year period.
Well, it was like the golden period for like 10 of the greatest directors ever, you know, and it's like, and the beginnings of Rob Reiner, whose run is insane, and then the beginnings of Ron Howard as well, who's kind of, he went out, like they both kind of went off into the 90s, but, you know, Spielberg and Lucas and everyone started this amazing run in the mid-70s, and John Landis as well. It was just this amazing run of top quality popcorn. You know, it all had weight, it had frivolity, it had kind of everything that you want in a film. It's stuff that people try and replicate today, and they miss it. I think some of it's cultural, like kids aren't allowed to be exposed to some of the horrors that you got in the 80s, like from E.T. and that kind of stuff, you know.
It's mad to think that Jaws, when it came out, it was a PG, or the equivalent of what it was in 75. I'm not sure what it was. It wouldn't have been a U, but it was certainly not. Yeah, do you think there's a lot of blood in it? There's a lot of dismemberment in it.
What's the best? Was it Intense Peril or something like that? They always put on the back of things. There's swearing. There's even a bit of nudity at the beginning.
Yeah,
so right. It's got all the hallmarks of a really good 15.
Definitely. But I mean, they did that with Star Wars when it went on to Disney Plus. At one point, they put it up to a PG because there was tobacco depiction in it, and it's just what?
I mean, I think
because in the cantina there's an alien smoking something, so they made it a PG, and you just think, well, that's not a PG. Come on.
I mean, it's a bit weird that it's like that. I mean, Star Wars does have like the bit where the guy gets his arm chopped off.
Yeah.
And which, you know, freaked me out as a kid because I was always obsessed with limbs being lopped off. You know, I think it's, you know, a lot of it because of Star Wars, because Luke gets his hand cut off, and then
there's a lot of dismemberment
in the canteen.
It's a common thing in the 70s, dismemberment.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, I think it was everyone was just trying to replicate The Omen or something. You know.
I mean, I think that whole period coming off the back of the 70s where you had a lot of fantasy films like Star Wars or Superman, as you move into the 80s, and for me personally, becoming a teenager at that time, starting to see a lot of the video nasties. I remember the first time I saw American Werewolf in London, it was, so I used to go to my nan's house in Canton in Cardiff, and our cousin Nicky Morgan lived up the road, and they had no front gardens. It was just the front window was out on the street, you know. And his mum and dad, they had a sofa up against the window facing into the house with the TV at the end of the room. And every Saturday night they'd watch a film. and they'd have the curtains open and we'd all be out in the street playing. But this one day they were watching American Werewolf and we're all kind of looking through the window and they didn't realize because they had their backs to us and the windows open so we could hear it as well. And then every time one of them would get up to go out to the kitchen to put the kettle on, we'd all have to duck down and then kind of hide and then sort of sneak back up and see what was going on. But that's how I first watched American Werewolf. But it was a great way to watch it.
I saw American Werewolf at my auntie's house. And again, I was like 7 years old. And I didn't get past the first 10 minutes because as soon as Jackie had eaten by Griffin Dunn, one of my heroes who...
Yeah, he's amazing.
I named my son after him.
Oh, cool.
My son is Griffin. Yeah, my auntie, I had to go and sit in the hallway on the stairs. And after being traumatized by the savagery of it all, and my auntie brought out my shepherd's pie that she'd cooked for me. And I was like, I can't touch it.
Shepherd's pie, after watching that.
It just reminded me of the guts and everything. All the mince was just like this guy's guts. So I can't even remember that when maybe it was even the same day where we actually finished it. But I just remember being sat on the stairs and rejecting shepherd's pie for the one and only time in my life. And yeah, and it stuck with me. And American Werewolf is probably my favorite horror film. Top 3 films of all time. Right?
Oh, absolutely. It's brilliant. Okay, brilliant. Let's move on. So question number 3, who was your biggest influence or hero?
I mean, it obviously changes throughout my life. We've actually just talked about a lot of my early influences. But I think when I became a writer, I would say I kind of got into writing in the 90s. And that would be down to all those great early indie things. Tarantino really blew my mind with, and it was actually True Romance.
Yeah.
It was True Romance first that I saw, and I just loved it so much. Then I saw all the Tarantino films not in order, because I saw True Romance, then I saw Pulp Fiction, then I saw Reservoir Dogs. But Pulp Fiction, particularly, I came out of that going, I want to do that. I want to do that. You know, because it was, I think it's obviously so in your face when it says written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. So it was like, again, you know, going back to the branding, like the band name kind of thing that I loved.
It's the John Carpenter thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And it was like, this is Quentin Tarantino. And I loved words, and I just wanted to create more of them. And so my first 2 attempts at a screenplay were just massive rip-offs of True Romance. And one was actually, the first one I did that I finished was actually a bit more kind of a kitchen sink serial killer thing.
Right.
Which I still think was a good idea, but I'm not going to tell it on here.
No, maybe you can go back to it, yeah.
But the Tarantino influence was massive. Throughout my career, though, I think my theatre was a bit more Tarantino-y than my films. My films have never really been that Tarantino-y. I think there's obviously, people have, weirdly, with Dead on the Vine, said it reminded them of Reservoir Dogs.
Okay.
Which was never an influence for me for it at all. I think it's just because it's a single location with some people stuck in it, really. But the dynamics and the structure and the style, not all similar, I think. But I'll take it. If they could work for a magazine so I can stick it on a poster, that would be great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think Tarantino was a watershed moment for me. And then as I kind of sort of just started discovering writers over directors, I remember, like, as it's Scott Rosenberg, I think.
Yeah.
He wrote Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. And because all of a sudden I started just looking at writers that weren't writer-directors and started noticing the names like David Koepp and Stephen Knight and all those kind of people. But then also Hal Hartley, who was obviously a writer-director, he changed my brain again, almost like away from the Tarantino-ness of it all, where Hal Hartley's dialogue is so sparse and amazing, funny. He works in the silences, he works in the weird pauses, and it's almost like Harold Pinter-y, kind of the undercurrents of unease and weirdness.
Well, I think that stuff's really important, isn't it? Because that's where an actor can really emote, is in those silences, in those pauses. It's not necessarily just about the words then. It's about
definitely.
The performance coming across through subtext. Yeah.
I used Henry Fool as an example for both Dead on the Vine and Guardians, as an example of the relationships between, like, Henry Fool and Simon Grimm, who Simon Grimm barely speaks and Henry Fool can't stop talking. You know, with Guardians, you've got that character dynamic with the Lavender character and the Carson character. And in Dead on the Vine, it's a similar, different setup, a bit more kind of reversal of mice and men kind of thing, but it's still the power dynamic, the way that film is written is just amazing to me. It's a perfect film.
Well, that's the thing. Extremes allow us to kind of look at the middle ground then, don't they? If we can see both sides of, that extremity, then the thing we want to actually talk about and explore is in the ground in the middle, right? So, I mean, that's why it works, I think. Yeah, that's a brilliant way of doing it. Okay, question number 4. Tell me about your first film. What was it?
I got told off by my mate Mike Shepherd, who you've met, I think, for not mentioning this last time I was talking about this kind of thing. So I'm going to talk about the first film that I directed, which was the short film written by Mike Shepherd called A Political Life. And it's an important film in my oeuvre because it made me feel like a director for the first time. It was a weird film. It's really funny. So it came from Mike breaking up with his girlfriend and having to move out of their quite nice flat in Shepherd's Bush. He goes, right, I've got an empty flat and I've written this script. Do you want to come and shoot it like tonight? And I was like, yeah, fantastic, let's do it. And I read the script and it was really funny. And it was about this this guy who's just in a flat and a friend comes to try and get him out of the flat. It's, again, very Pinteresque, very abstract kind of strangeness where you never see Mike's character move. He just appears in bits of the flat while his mate's trying to figure out why he won't leave. And then it turns out like he's the Home Secretary of the United Kingdom and has clearly had some sort of breakdown. And it's just really funny. So we shot it like with what we had, which was very little. Mike lived next to this kind of little spa hotel. So we added a bit of budget by making Jack Baldwin, the other actor, go into the hotel and then come out again as if he's some important person. And then we cut, even though it's next door, we cut. So it looked like he'd just come up somewhere important and then going into the weird, completely empty flats. And then it was, because we had so little, it was just, we had to really kind of think about how to make this cinematic and how to make this atmospheric. And again, it was really good collaboration. It was me, it was my brother, Jonathan, Fred Fournier, who did the camera and ultimately edited it, and Mike and Jack. And that was just us 5, just having an evening in this bizarre flat, making this bizarre film. We were just really happy with it. It was just really good fun. And we, I remember we took it to, it was in the Cannes short film corner. It was also, I think, was it in Cannes in the van?
That rings a bell.
Yeah, you used to drive a van to Cannes from London.
Yeah, that's right.
And then park it on the Corvette and show films out the back of it.
That's right, yeah.
Great. I love Cannes in the van. And then we did a couple of festivals. We didn't really know how to do festivals then back in that day. So we just kind of screened it at my short film night and everything. And it was just really satisfying that we'd done something that was kind of exactly what we wanted to do. It was completely...
And then get it out and about, yeah. So what was it about that made you feel like you were a director then?
Well, I had to kind of come up with a sort of a concept of how to shoot it. Mike had this great script, but it could have been shot in 1,000 different ways. But me and Mike have always had a great understanding of each other's work. We've out of everyone that I know, Mike gets my stuff more than anyone. Maybe Brad Watson as well. But like Mike has always really got what I wanted to do, and I tend to get what he wants to do. And so so we just kind of had a discussion, I think, and said, yeah, we're going to make it this really kind of feel like a really serious film.
So you had a very clear, you had a clear vision from the script straight away, which I think is the most important thing for a director, really, isn't it? Is to have an idea of what they want the audience to feel and see, and how to convey that script
exactly.
in a visual manner.
If it was someone that wasn't me shooting it, they probably could have gone a bit more broad on it and a bit more silly. Whereas we're like, no, this has to be a deadpan film. This has to treat itself really seriously. That's where the humor is. That's why it's so silly, because it's so serious. So then it was just about like, how do we get that kind of serious atmosphere? So it was like filming close-ups of shoes, getting, Jack to smoke outside a posh hotel, really establishing this grand atmosphere and ultimately bringing it down to this ridiculous man. And the way Mike writes as well, it's really brilliant sort of on the surface dialogue that has this really under the surface anger, but it's like a silly anger. They're talking about the fizziness of a beer, but it's done with such kind of like, do you like the fizz? It just makes me laugh like so much, like this just sort of juxtaposition of triviality and utter kind of gravity,
I think that's the thing, isn't it? There are certain projects that just have your name on it, whether you like it or not. There's certain scripts, you read them and you just go, I have to make this. I can clearly see this in my head. I know exactly what it needs. And, if someone else does it, they're going to screw it up. So I know I need to do it. And it's not an arrogance, I don't think. I think it's just, I genuinely believe anyone can direct. But I think it has to be the right thing.
Yeah, completely. I think that I can only direct things that I know how to direct.
Yeah.
And that's not a lack of technical ability because I don't have any technical ability. And it's not a lack of confidence and stuff. It's just when I know how to do it, I know how to do it.
Exactly, yeah.
And when I don't, and I shouldn't be the director of it.
But I think that's important to know that as well. When you shouldn't be the director is equally as
Yeah.
important as when
So
you should
there's
be.
not enough people in the world who have
No.
that kind of self-awareness.
No, exactly. Brilliant. Okay, let's move on. Question number 5. What is your worst filmmaking experience and how has that defined you as a filmmaker?
Ooh, so many to choose from. I mean, my first film, it started off well. Everything kind of seemed like it was going okay. And then the film ultimately ended up being a very unsatisfying experience. It was quite painful because whilst the film ultimately did end up opening doors for me, because once you've got a feature film on your CV, things change a little bit. But I was just like, why is this being done in this way? And it's so frustrating to see what was a pretty well received script be treated with such little respect. And they didn't change a lot of it. It was just the way it was handled. It was the way the actors were handled. It was the way the post production was handled. There was so little care, so little sort of forethought involved in it. So that was painful. But
But that is unfortunately quite a common thing, isn't it? Because, obviously as a writer, you've put all this thought and care into creating this world and creating these characters and creating this story and creating this theme that you want to talk about. And then you hand it over to people who kind of go, well, I'm just being paid for the next 4 hours. So I don't really care. I'll knock something together and it'll do. Obviously not everyone in the industry is like that, but there are enough people in the industry like that where I think as a filmmaker, sometimes you have to accept that not everyone's going to work at the level you're working at in terms of commitment or thought or care. I guess it's like we were talking about before about certain jobs are just so right for a certain director, but I think it's across the board for everyone, head of departments, right down to runners. There are certain jobs they're just suited to and certain jobs they're not suited to, certain films, I mean. And if they're not suited to it, then they should not be doing it, right? If you're not the right director for a project, you shouldn't be doing it, right? You should have enough self-awareness to do that. But unfortunately, our industry isn't like that because everyone's scrabbling to make a living and everyone's desperate for work.
That's exactly it. It was about making a living. It's not like an underworld or lower level of filmmaking, which is 100 grand to £1 million films that are, loads get made, loads never get seen, but everyone gets paid. Everyone gets paid their daily rates and they get paid their producer fees and the director's fees. And that is just their job. And the film's quality seems to take a backseat. It's just about getting it made, getting it finished, getting the tax breaks, and just being able to pay everyone. And, on some level, that's fine because, it is an industry and people need to get paid. But what I could not understand, because I feel this is what happened with this film, is that there's no need for it to be bad.
Yeah.
There's enough talented people in the world for it to be good still. Whatever your shoot days, whatever your budget, whatever you think, there's no reason for it to be crap. There'll always be someone that can write it well enough. There'll always be someone who can act in it well enough. The people in charge, for some reason, though, either out of ego or laziness or arrogance or what, they kind of seem to want to just do it in a certain way that makes it end up being rubbish. And I don't understand.
It's frustrating.
I don't get it.
Then it becomes a frustrating and unsatisfying experience, doesn't it? Yeah. All right. Well, with that in mind, question number 6 is conversely, what is your best filmmaking experience and how has that helped you as a filmmaker?
After the first film, that a lot of the actors were involved in that film I just mentioned, and we all came out of that very frustrated about the results. I'd had a few close calls with features that almost got picked up, almost got made, and then fell apart. And so just out of sheer frustration, we made Guardians. So I got all the actors together that I wanted to be in it. I got the crew that I wanted as the HODs and stuff. I got them all together and I said, who wants to make a feature film? I reckon we can do this in 10 days. So if you're in, say it now, and then we'll choose 10 days and we'll work to that. And so everyone that I got together all said yes. We picked our 10 days and we worked towards it and we did it. And we got on set, shot, 10 days, done. Well, we actually came back for a couple of days of pickups. So, we were all mates. We were all good friends. We'd all been through short films and theatre and stuff together.
So that probably gave it an energy then. But also, I guess that you didn't have a deadline to work to, right?
I mean, we always kind of worked towards Cannes, really. Just what can we take to Cannes with us to see if we could sell it and see if we can get meetings and stuff. So I think it was February was when we shot it. we wanted a trailer for that year's Cannes in May. Then we wanted to see if we could get any interest off it, which we did and didn't. I can't remember now. But it was the next year in Cannes. We had the trailer, but we didn't have anything resembling a cut. So we went to Cannes the next year with a rough cut because we were quite behind on everything and had meetings. And then it was the year after that we actually sold it. So it was quite a long process.
Did you sell it at Cannes?
We signed it off in Cannes. I got sales agents from London, but it was in Cannes.
Well, the final agreement, yeah.
But yeah, that was a much less frustrating situation than Dead on the Vine because we were just kind of chugging along and off our own backs, having no help whatsoever from anyone, and which is how I wanted it because I had so much frustration from other people, and I was like, if it's going to go tits up, I want it to be my fault. That process, whilst it had its ups and downs, we weren't frustrated that much because it was our mistakes we were making. We weren't at the mercy of anyone else. So we felt we had space to make our own mistakes and we weren't scared of it, rather than being frustrated with loads of other people who are making decisions for you. That drove me crazy when you could see their decisions were bad.
Yeah.
And it's still happening now, even like 5 films in now, and I still see these other people making decisions that I wouldn't make. And it's like, not saying they're wrong, but it's just, I feel powerless a lot of the time. And
well, it's tricky, isn't it? As an independent, we spend so much of our time doing everything because we have to get a project up and running. We have to do everything. We have to write, we have to produce, we have to direct, we have to sometimes film ourselves. Sometimes you're recording sound yourself. Yeah, you have to do everything. So to get to a point where you delegate it to other people and they're just coming in as a job in tech or a job in producer or a job in this or a job in that, whatever, they're not as invested in it as we would be. So it's hard to sometimes, I think, delegate. I know I've been in that situation myself a lot where I was working on a project and I was working with a producer who was very good at talking the talk, but not so good at making sure there was a cup of coffee there for everybody in the morning. Those sorts of frustrations are really hard. That's the hard stuff. Because if they can't get that right, how are they going to get all the other business stuff right? Because it's not hard to make sure there's a cup of coffee for the crew in the morning, at a bare minimum, right? So it's that kind of stuff. I mean, I remember doing a shoot years ago. I was directing something for a production company, and I turn up, and there's no catering at all for anybody, right? This is the second day in, and I said to them, the producer, I said, look, you can't expect the entire crew and the actors to work on no food. It's the one thing you've got to get right is the food, right?
That's terrible because like the biggest expenditure on Guardians was the food.
Has to be. It's fuel.
That was like a third of the budget we spent on food.
It's like not putting petrol in your car.
Yeah.
It's just you have to do it, right? And it's one of them things. It's boring, it's tedious, but you have to make sure that there's a decent amount of food for everybody to keep people going. Fuel. Yeah, and do you know what his response was? He went, "Oh yeah, I'll go out and get some." So off he went down. He sent a runner down the shop. Came back with 2 packets of biscuits.
What?
For a 12-hour shoot. No. And it's the only time I've ever felt like genuinely walking off a set. But, that part of your brain that goes, no, I'm going to be professional here, wouldn't allow me to do it. But I should have because, he wasn't looking after the crew. And as a director, you kind of have to step up and say, well, actually, if you're not going to look after the crew, they're not going to be able to deliver for me. So I need to make sure that you're doing your job properly because this isn't acceptable. So for the third day, I had a bit of a row with him in the evening and he basically bought a loaf of bread and some cheese spread and made a load of sandwiches for the next day himself.
I mean like how hard is it to put on a giant bowl of pasta or something?
And this was a professional production company. I won't mention names, obviously, and you kind of go, this is insane. You can't work with people like this.
I'm saying, how can they become professional if they miss the first golden rule of filmmaking, which is a crew works on its stomach,
So if you were going to sum up your best filmmaking experience in one quick soundbite, what would it be?
I think All In Together.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. It's an amazing thing when that happens, right? When everything just clicks and it's right, regardless of how the film turns out. It's just that experience. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, let's move on. Question number 7. How did you get your first film sold or distributed? Was it through a company or did you self-distribute?
It was through a company. Yeah, it was a weird time because, like I say, we went to Cannes a number of times. We went to the AFM. We went to a couple of film markets. The interest was decent, but again, we didn't know what we were doing. And also, it was a strange time, like in the mid 2010s. So it was like 2016, 17.
Right.
Yeah, it was through a company. In the end, 101 International, who you might recognize from having their own rack in FOP. But they did a good job for us for a little small film, because they usually do cult films, and they were looking for just a few more little like sort of prestige films. And Steve, the buyer, he really liked Guardians. He really had a good reaction to it, and so we were quite happy to get that. But it was a long slog to get to that point. You know, we went to markets in Cannes, at the AFM, all around. You know, and the industry was changing so massively there. The way distribution was coming, streaming was coming in, and DVD was going out, and cinema was going out, and we wanted DVD, but we just couldn't get it. And also, there was loads of little like startups of like the attempts at starting their own platforms. And so we had loads of meetings with all these really enthusiastic young pups who were saying, yeah, we're going to be filmmaker friendly. We're going to be on this, that, and the other, you know.
Boutique.
And then they would they would just be either, depending on the conspiracy theories and stuff, they're either absorbed by Netflix and Amazon and stuff, or they just didn't have the money to push on to the next level, I guess. So it wasn't a lot of wasted time, because it was always experience, and you're kind of learning stuff and learning the lingo. But it was ultimately, 101 that I got in touch with. But I remember meeting Steve in a cafe in Soho, and he's going, yeah, really like it. Going to show it to my people. And he did, and they liked it. And so I think it was Cannes that year that I met up with the guy who was doing all the organizing. And he's like, yeah, so we're going to get on here. And we'll turn it on next week.
How did that change things for you guys?
Just having a film that was out in the world, that you could say, here's my film, it's on Sky, was on Virgin Media for a bit, it's on a variety of platforms. It just, people took you seriously a bit more. You know, it was a feature film that you'd made and sold. And so when I was going into rooms, I had a track record all of a sudden, you know, one that I was actually proud of, rather than, because it'd be my second feature, but the first one that I directed. But it was also the first one that I would let people watch. You know, I wouldn't avoid the conversation like the other one. And so
my first one's on Amazon, and I still have that problem.
And it's I'm like, don't watch it.
Yeah.
The main effect is it put me in touch with Laura, who's the producer on Dead on the Vine. So Suzanne Smith, who shot Dead on the Vine, she used to work with Laura at BAFTA doing a variety of things. Laura had taken a bit of a sabbatical to have kids, and was coming back into the industry and looking for young up-and-comers. And so Suze recommended me, and we had a meeting. She read some of my stuff, and we clicked.
Yeah.
And so we started working towards trying to get a couple of films off the ground, mostly my film Limpet, which, as history will tell you, didn't get off the ground. But we came close, but again, COVID. Then Dead on the Vine happened with Laura, so that took all our focus. Dead on the Vine kind of brought Laura back into producing full time now, and so she's going great guns now. She produced Midas Man, Something in the Water, and a few other things that's coming up.
So it's basically from that process of getting the film out, you've managed to hook up with a producer who
and that happened.
Is getting things done.
Like Brad as well. I met Brad because of it. Brad Watson, who shot Video Killed the Radio Star, which is my next script that got made. Strangely, I wanted James Rumsey to be first AD on Guardians, but he couldn't, because he was first ADing on this guy, Brad Watson's film. So when I went to Cannes that year, Rumsey was like, oh, you need to meet Brad. And so I met Brad, and we literally stood in the corner for 10 hours getting drunk and talking about Joe Dante and Spielberg and stuff.
Filmmakers getting drunk? Surely not.
Well, not anymore, but yeah, back in 2018.
Yeah.
So we connected on a very deep cinematic geek level, and it turns out he really liked my writing as well. So we started trying to push films, and finally 8-9 years later we got our first film together. So Guardians sort of led pretty much to Dead on the Vine and Video Killed the Radio Star.
Brilliant. Let's move on. Question 8. What does it mean to be a filmmaker to you? How would you describe what you do?
I mean, it's everything to me, because it's all I've ever wanted to be. It's all I've ever tried to be. The struggle was more satisfying than The Office. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
You know, as I say, I'm a compulsive writer. My entire day is taken up with that in one way or another. You know, it's just my entire life. I am utterly defined by my writing.
Storytelling.
It's the one thing that I can have control over. It's the one thing that keeps me sane. and gives me total satisfaction. Even if the films don't get made, I just love
Yeah.
the fact that I wrote it.
The process.
Because in my head, they are made.
Yeah.
In my head, they are fully formed and there, so having them actually done is a bonus.
Do you struggle with writing, or is it something that comes easy? Is it something you really have to work at, or?
No, I find it's quite easy, really. I mean, not to sound arrogant, but I mean, I write a lot and very fast as well. So Dead in the Vine, I wrote in 2 weeks. Video Killed the Radio Star, first draft I did in 9 days. And that's not to say that I finished articles by any means.
No.
I can blast out a draft pretty sharpish. Yeah. And that's my favorite thing to do. I love it.
Yeah. So in terms of the process of structuring a script or putting a script together, do you outline first? What's your process?
I do a 2-pager generally, because I was trying to teach this to some kids the other day in this masterclass thing I was doing about story. And what I've learned going from short film to feature films is that not all stories are bigger than a short film. and some short films are too big some stories are too big for a short film. And so the way I work is I'll think of an idea, and then I'll spend a little bit of time just wandering around the streets of London, seeing if it'll fill enough of my brain to make a feature film. At the beginning, middle, and end, is the character interesting enough to push the narrative? Is there enough kind of scope for a fun and interesting plot that I'll enjoy writing? All these things, it's all quite ephemeral and quite like globulous in my brain. It just kind of spins around and around and around until things just go click, click, click. And then I'll go, yes. And then I'll be literally compelled to write it. And then after that,
so it's really, you need it to percolate first. Is the prep process is the important part for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is like kind of goes against the rules a bit, but Brad always says my first drafts are the best first drafts in the business, and I don't know what that says about my second drafts, but it's
yeah. Thanks, Brad.
It's simply, I think, it comes from the fact that I spend so much time walking around and thinking about it before I write it.
Yeah,
that it's all there in my head. So my first drafts are good because it's worked out. I've done it. I've done the job of the second draft already.
But you've still put in the work. That's the thing, is it might be a first draft, but you've put in the work to get to that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all there. It's just not necessarily on the page. Because I don't like rewriting my own scripts that much. I like working with directors and I like making it better. If I haven't written the first draft well, then I've done something wrong. So yeah, that's generally my process.
Yeah, absolutely right. Script is king, isn't it?
You'd think so.
And queen, it's everything. Yeah.
Anyone with a brain knows script is king. Script is everything.
Yeah. Question 9. Tell me about the best gadget or tool that helps you as a filmmaker.
I'm going to go with my writing software because it's not Final Draft.
Shock horror.
It is Highland 2.0. It was invented by John August, the writer of Big Fish, Go, member of Tim Burton films. And so he invented this one where you can essentially just keep typing and it'll format for you. And I was like, oh, I'll have a slice of that. So I got it. And then it's got all these other little things as well where you can just select a section of your script. And instead of deleting it or saving it into Word or something else, it's got like a bin that you can put it in and it'll just be there waiting for you to bring it back.
I like the old editing bins.
Yeah, but I think it's amazing. It's completely changed the speed of which I could write and how I did it. Worked much more for my brain. Highland really helps simplify that with the cool bin thing and with its user friendliness. It's really helps me.
Well, I guess anything that makes your working process more efficient is going to be beneficial, right? So
yeah, absolutely love it.
Well, we're fast approaching the end in many, many ways. Question 10. Finally, what is the one thing you wish that someone had told you when you first started out?
Ooh, drink less. I mean, it's weird. It's like you feel like you have to make your own mistakes. If any deviation from the path that I took, I weirdly, I look at the film About Time when talking about this kind of thing. There's one bit where Donald Gleason changes something, and when he comes back, he's got 2 different kids because his children only existed in the way things happened and the way things happened. And so that's how I think about all my choices and all my missteps and all things that if I change any of it, then I wouldn't have my 2 kids.
So don't regret.
And so
just get on.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't regret. But I had too much fun and not enough discipline when I was younger, when I was doing theatre, and even when I was doing up to Guardians, really. I would have probably progressed quicker had I not been so drunk all the time.
Yeah, I do believe that I have spent a night or two with you drunk, and same here, really. But that's what you do when you're young and stupid, and you're in the film industry, right?
It was just part of my life that every single day was a quest to find a good night out
Yeah,
and make films in amongst all that. And after every meeting, it was like that was the beginning of the night. Every rehearsal, that was the beginning of the night. And it was just everything was centered around getting drunk. And that was great fun, but it slowed me down and
just
it
getting away.
ultimately
Yeah.
put me in a position now where I had to give up booze because it wasn't good. So I had to go.
But I think that's amazing because you've recognized that and you've acted on it. And as a result, your career has improved from it, right? So there's a great piece of advice. Look at the things that are obstacles, the things that are in your way, both self-driven problems and external problems, and then recognize them, deal with them, and move past them as quickly as you can.
Here's another one as well. I just thought of because it was something that my little cousin, who wanted to be a writer when she was 13, and she quit. She'd won some awards and she quit because she didn't think she was interesting enough to be a writer. And it occurred to me that I had those same thoughts. I was just arrogant enough to not listen to them.
Push past them. Yeah.
And it occurred to me, I said, but you are interesting enough. You're only not interesting to yourself because you are the norm for yourself. But to someone else, you are not the norm. You are unusual. You are interesting. You are different.
Yeah.
And I think it all comes down to confidence. And I never had confidence that much as a kid. So I would try and circumvent the just have confidence thing, because that's not so easy, by saying, don't doubt your interestingness. Don't doubt your individuality. Don't doubt that you have a story to tell that only you can tell.
Well, we're not encouraged to, are we? In society, we're not encouraged to be the other, to be different, to be ourselves. We're not encouraged that way. It's all about conformity, right?
Totally. Worst thing about the society is we are told not to be individuals. We are told to conform.
Yeah. Conformity, it kills.
I think mental health in this country would be significantly improved if we did not all have to work to the same goals.
Yeah,
exactly. As in have to work 9 to 5 doesn't work for everybody.
Doesn't work for me. And I couldn't do a 9 to 5. No.
Exactly. And
I've done it, and it drove me mad. It literally did.
And so much of our anxiety comes from our inability to fit into what society has told us is how we are meant to be living.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a Richard Linklater podcast the other day, and he's like, he's as have hundreds of people in our industry now been diagnosed with ADHD and all sorts. And he said, but filmmaking fits me. It fits my brain. And so I am happy doing that, and my anxiety levels are low because that fits how I work.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's exactly right, because how can we all be fitting into the same hole? We're not all these square pegs.
No, exactly. The great sadness about it, just think about how many great writers and great filmmakers and great artists we've lost to that process. People who never quite got over those insecurities or that sense of conformity, I must conform. Great storytellers. And yet they've never pushed themselves in that direction.
Not long after I moved to London, after I tried to have normal jobs, I said, I'm never going to do anything that isn't in some way trying to make myself happy. And it's not a selfish thing. I'm not trying to be selfish. And it's not my happiness at the expense of others. It's just if I'm in a good place, I can function.
Yeah.
Coming from a kind of small town, northeast, Teesside upbringing, where the world didn't really expand outside of the borders of Cleveland, film showed me the world. And I wanted to go to those films, and I did in the end. Me and my brother, we did a trip across America of our favorite film locations.
I did the same. I went to Devil's Tower just because of Close Encounters. In the RV park at the base of Devil's Tower, they show Close Encounters on a big screen every night.
Amazing.
And I was determined I wanted to do it. And I did. And it was amazing. But after the film, everyone went back to the RV, but I thought I was still quite wired. So I thought I got to go for a walk. So I walked up towards the Devil's Tower. And as I'm walking up there, I kid you not, this is like midnight, right? And I'm walking up there, it's clear night, stars, it's, literally just like out of the movie. Suddenly this light appears on the horizon and starts sweeping down towards, and I thought, oh my God, it's happening. It's really happening.
Oh my God.
And then suddenly the park ranger's truck drives around the corner and it's like, but in that moment, I was absolutely transported to, this is real. This is going to happen. I'm going to meet aliens.
Amazing.
And there's the power of film, right?
Yeah. My brother's favorite location that we went to was the Russell Nash's antique shop
Oh, yeah.
and in New York from Highlander. So,
There can be only one.
yeah.
Getting a Scotsman to play a Spaniard against a Frenchman playing a Scotsman.
But it worked. It works.
It did work.
One of the greatest
Absolutely
films of all
does
time.
work. Mark, absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
A massive thanks to Mark for being on the show. You can find out more about Mark and his films at www.markacbrown.com. That's www.markacbrown.com. This has been a Workshop Presents Productions. Music by Christopher Nettleton. If you like this episode, feel free to check out future chats when they're available. Thanks for listening. See you next time.